Your thoughts on Alex and her potential as a player. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, she's an amazing player. She's incredible. I think she's a star. And it's just really cool to have someone like her that, I guess people can look up to. And
3 months ago, every time Alex Ayala beat a great player, people asked the same question: can she do it again? 6 weeks ago, they called Wimbledon a breakthrough. A few days ago, they called Washington another dream run. Then she walked onto the court against Naomi Osaka, 4 Grand Slam titles, former world number one of the greatest hardcourt players of her generation. And Alex Ayala didn't just beat her, she beat her in straight sets. No deciding set, no dramatic escape. No miracle comeback, just controlled, confident tennis. When the final ball landed, Alex wasn't celebrating another upset. She was walking into the first WTA 500 final of her career. And perhaps, for the first time, the conversation around her had changed. Maybe this wasn't a breakthrough anymore. Maybe this was simply who Alex Ayala had become. For years, Naomi Osaka has represented one of the toughest challenges in women's tennis, especially on hard courts. All 4 of her Grand Slam titles came on this surface. Even after injuries and time away from the tour, she rebuilt her ranking from outside the world's top 100 back to the edge of the top 10. She arrived in Washington playing some of her best tennis of the season, fighting through difficult matches, and looking increasingly like the player who once dominated the biggest stages. This wasn't a former champion living on reputation. It was a former champion finding her level again. That distinction matters. Because defeating a player in decline raises one set of questions. Defeating a player on the rise answers a completely different one. Alex understood exactly what awaited her. Before the semifinal, she spoke about expecting Osaka to make life difficult. And about the need to return that pressure. It sounded like a simple comment, but it revealed her mindset. She wasn't stepping onto the court hoping Osaka would have an off day. She expected the challenge and planned for it. From the opening games, that plan became obvious. Alex refused to give Osaka the first strike she depends on. She stepped inside the baseline, attacked second serves, derated pace before rallies could develop, and consistently forced Osaka to play one extra shot from uncomfortable positions. Instead of allowing the 4-time Grand Slam champion to dictate, she quietly took control of the match's rhythm. The scoreboard reflected that control: straight sets, no collapse, no late drama, just another elite opponent searching for answers she couldn't find. And that's what made this victory different. It wasn't the biggest surprise of Alex Ayala's career. It was the hardest victory to dismiss, because by now, there were simply too many of them. The victory over Naomi Osaka didn't stand alone. It completed a pattern that had been forming for months. That's what made Washington feel different, not because Alex Ayala defeated another champion, but because each victory required her to solve an entirely different problem. Earlier in the week, Olympic gold medalist Zheng Qinwen presented one of the biggest serving challenges on the WTA tour. Her power had overwhelmed opponents all season, and after taking the opening set, she looked ready to do the same again. Alex never tried to match Zheng's power. She changed the geometry of the match instead. She stepped closer to the baseline on returns, took time away after the serve, and gradually forced the Olympic champion into longer rallies she no longer controlled. The match that appeared to be slipping away quietly turned in the opposite direction. A day later came an entirely different examination. Leylah Fernandez wasn't trying to overpower Alex. She was trying to outlast her. When Fernandez stormed to a 5-1 lead in the second set, many players would have started chasing winners, trying to recover 4 games in a matter of minutes. Alex did the opposite. She slowed everything down. She held serve. She earned one break back, then another, point by point. The scoreboard stopped feeling impossible because she never tried to erase it all at once. Against Elina Svitolina, the challenge changed again. Svitolina has spent more than a decade frustrating opponents through patience rather than power. She stretches rallies, forces difficult decisions, and waits for mistakes to arrive naturally. Alex never allowed that rhythm to exist. By taking the ball early and standing aggressively on the baseline, she removed the time Svitolina normally uses to build pressure. The result wasn't accidental either. She had already beaten Svitolina only weeks earlier in Berlin by almost the exact same score. Then came perhaps the biggest test of all. Unlike Zheng, Osaka wasn't relying only on raw power. Unlike Fernandez, she wasn't trying to grind through endless exchanges. Unlike Svitolina, she wasn't interested in constructing long rallies. She wanted first strike tennis, big serve, big return, point over. It is the style that made her a 4-time Grand Slam champion. And one of the most dominant hard-court players of her generation, Alex answered that challenge differently as well. She neutralized Osaka's first strike before it could become decisive. Her return positioning forced Osaka to play extra balls. Her depth repeatedly pushed the former world number one behind the baseline. Instead of allowing Osaka to dictate, Alex quietly became the player deciding where rallies would begin and how they would unfold. That's the remarkable part of Washington. It wasn't 4 victories. It was 4 different solutions. Against Zheng, she solved overwhelming power. Against Fernandez, she solved momentum. Against Svitolina, she solved patience. Against Osaka, she solved first strike aggression. Most young players become dangerous because they possess one exceptional weapon, a huge serve, a devastating forehand, unmatched speed. Alex's greatest strength may be something less obvious. She keeps finding new answers. That's why these victories no longer feel like isolated upsets. Every tournament asks a different question. Every champion presents a different puzzle. And somehow, Alex continues finding the right solution, which raises a much bigger question than who she defeated in Washington. If she can adapt to 4 completely different champions in the span of one extraordinary week, what exactly has she become? Because by now, it no longer looks like a player enjoying one unforgettable run. It looks like a player learning how to win against almost every style the WTA Tour can put in front of her. And that realization changes the conversation heading into the biggest tournaments of the season. By the time Alex Ayala walked off the court, the biggest story wasn't simply that she had reached her first WTA 500 final. It was that the word upset was becoming harder to use, not because she defeated Naomi Osaka. Because of everything that had happened before it, think about the journey Washington revealed: an Olympic gold medalist, a defending champion, a former world number 3, a 4-time Grand Slam champion, and former world number 1. Those weren't 4 lucky draws. They were 4 completely different champions, each asking a different question, each demanding a different answer. And each time, Alex found one. That is what separates a memorable tournament from a career-changing one. A breakthrough is usually built around one extraordinary victory. A genuine contender proves she can repeat it. Washington was no longer about one famous name on the other side of the net. It became proof that Alex's game is beginning to travel. Different surfaces, different conditions, different styles. The level remains. That's exactly what the WTA's best players pay attention to. They don't fear someone capable of producing one incredible afternoon. They pay attention to players whose level keeps returning. Because consistency changes the draw before the first ball is struck. A few months ago, Alex Ayala was the exciting young player higher-ranked opponents expected to beat eventually. Now, that expectation is quietly shifting. When the next tournament draw is released, seeded players won't simply notice her name. They'll begin asking where she is. Nobody wants an opponent who has already shown she can solve power, patience, momentum, and first strike aggression in the same week. That reputation isn't built by rankings. The rankings simply arrive later, and now they are arriving. Alex entered Washington ranked just outside the world's top 20. By reaching the final, she guaranteed the highest ranking of her career and moved into the WTA's top 20 for the first time. That achievement carries far more significance than a number beside her name. It changes how future tournaments unfold. Higher rankings mean better seedings. Better seedings often mean avoiding the very biggest names during the opening rounds of major tournaments. For months, Alex has been defeating elite players far earlier than most contenders would ever have to face them. Now, the rankings are finally beginning to reward those performances. The timing could hardly be better. The North American hardcourt swing is only beginning. Toronto comes next, then Cincinnati, then the US Open. Unlike many of the players around her in the rankings, Alex has very few points to defend from the previous season. That means almost every victory over the next several weeks pushes her forward. Instead of simply protecting her position, the opportunity isn't just to stay inside the top 20. It's to climb even higher before New York. But rankings alone don't explain why this run feels different. The feeling has changed. A few months ago, every headline carried a question. Can Alex Ayala really compete with the best players in the world? Miami introduced the possibility. Berlin strengthened the argument. Wimbledon made the tennis world pay attention. Washington may have finished the conversation because champions don't accidentally defeat champions over and over again. At some point, repeated success stops being surprising. It becomes expected. That may be the biggest victory Alex earned this week. Not the ranking, not even the final. She changed the way the tennis world looks at her. When opponents prepare for Alex Ayala now, They won't be studying a talented young player capable of producing the occasional upset. They'll be preparing for someone who has already demonstrated she can adjust her tactics, absorb pressure, and beat elite opponents in more than one way. That is a far more difficult player to face. Standing between Alex and the biggest title of her career is one final challenge. Whether it is Jessica Pegula or Diana Schneider waiting across the net, the task will be different once again. Pegula would test her consistency and ability to absorb relentless pressure. Schneider would challenge her with aggressive left-handed patterns and early ball striking. Either way, Alex won't need to become a different player. Washington has already shown that her greatest strength isn't one particular shot, it's her ability to adapt. Every opponent has presented a different puzzle. Every round has demanded a different answer. So perhaps the most important lesson from this remarkable week isn't that Alex Ayala reached her first WTA 500 final, it's that she reached it without relying on the same formula twice. For years, people have asked when Alex Ayala would announce herself on the biggest stages. Perhaps Washington provided the answer. She already has. The only question that remains now is no longer whether she belongs among the world's best. It's how many more players will have to lose to her before nobody calls those victories surprises anymore.